Hello, my name is Reese Waters, and welcome back to another episode of Learn Akkadian. So to start things off, huge shout out to last week's Cuneiform Challenge winner, Andros Lang, who correctly translated Itatsar, which is a G-perfect, third-person singular of Matsarum. And as you can see, the N has assimilated to the T, and the translation is he, she, or it has guarded. So today, let's learn about nouns. So nouns have a couple different parts. So first, nouns have gender. So nouns can either be masculine or they can be feminine. Second, nouns have number. So a noun can either be singular, like king, plural, like kings, or it can be in the dual. And the dual is a little bit more unique to Akkadian, and it would be used for something like eyes, where we have a pair of two. And the third part of nouns is case. So nouns can either be written in the nominative, accusative, or the genitive case. And we're going to talk more about this in just a second. Each of these three parts, gender, number, and case, affect how a noun was written. So when we're learning to translate, we're going to be able to identify different parts of the word in order to figure out the gender, the number, and the case, which is going to tell us how this noun agrees with other parts of the sentence. So let's talk about case. So Akkadian is what is called a declined language. And what that means is that nouns are going to change their ending in order to tell us how the noun functions within the sentence. And the order in which these nouns are put in isn't actually going to matter because the case ending is going to tell us their purpose. So in English, we know the meaning of a sentence and the meaning of each noun within this sentence based off the order in which the words are put in. So for example, I'll use this sentence, Bob ate pizza. So because Bob comes first, we know that Bob is the subject who's performing the action, which is eating, on pizza, which is the direct object. But in Akkadian, you wouldn't have to put these in order to understand the meaning of the sentence. So if we were to rearrange these words, pizza ate Bob, it would completely change the meaning of the sentence. Now pizza is the subject performing the action, which is eating Bob. So since Akkadian is a declined language, each noun is going to have their own case, which is going to be demonstrated in this sense with these endings and am. So in Akkadian, this is actually called the nominative case, which means that it's a subject. So Babam, based off the ending, we know that we're talking about the subject who performed the action ate on the direct object, pizza am, based off this. So if we were to rearrange these words, because of their case endings, we would still understand the meaning of the sentence. So Babam, because of we know is the subject, and we know that this is the verb, so we know that Babam ate, and then because of the am on pizza, this case ending, we know that it's the direct object. So Babam ate pizzam. Even if it's read pizzam Babam ate, we're still going to know the meaning. For masculine singular nouns, the nominative case is written by adding to the stem of the noun, which is going to indicate the subject. The accusative case is written adding am to the stem of the noun, which is going to show that this is the object. And the genitive case is written by adding m to the stem of the noun, and this is showing that the noun is coming after a preposition. So for example, if I was going to say in the house, I would put house in the genitive to show that that noun is related to the preposition in. Now let's look at some examples in Akkadian. So here we have sharum itzbat. Now shar, this root right here, means king. So by adding the or the nominative case to it, we know that the subject is king. And then itzbat means seized, and it's a third person singular preterite G-system verb. So together, we can translate this to be the king seized. And just a quick note, in Akkadian, there's no the or other articles like a or some or any added to the noun. So you're going to have to supply these on your own. And this is based off context. So I could say a king seized or the king seized. You're just going to kind of have to work with it to see what works within the translation. Now, if we change the case ending to am, which is our accusative ending, it's going to completely change the meaning of this sentence. So now that am has been added to our root shar, we know that king is going to be the object of the action. So we can still translate this as he, she, or it seized, but now rather than the king being the subject who does the seizing, the king is going to be the object who is seized. So we would translate this as he, she, or it seized the king. And as you can see, we're still going to supply that article there in order to make it a complete sentence in English. So now I've added a new section to our sentence, ina alam. So ina is the most common Akkadian preposition, and it means in. Now alam, if we wanted to find the definition, we would add the nominative case ending by taking off im and adding um to the stem, which is al, because all of the nouns in the dictionary are going to be listed in their nominative. So by searching alam, I can find out that it means city. So because of the genitive ending, which is an im, we're going to recognize that city is in relation to this preposition. So it means in the city. So it's he, she, or it sees the king in the city. And that would be a complete sentence. All of the words that we've looked at so far have been in the masculine singular form, but we can change these into the feminine form by adding the feminine T. So the feminine T works by adding a T to the stem before the case ending. So as you can see here, marum means sun. But when we add the feminine T right at the end of the stem mar, it becomes martum, which then changes it to be a singular feminine noun, which is daughter. So as you can see, it completely is going to change the meaning, but it's going to utilize the same stem, and it's going to utilize the exact same case endings, just adding that feminine T after the stem and before the case ending. Some nouns have two consonants at the end of their root. So if we were going to add a feminine T, that would leave us with three consonants. But in Akkadian, you never ever have three consonants side by side. The maximum you can have is two consonants in any case. So because this wouldn't be possible, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to add an A before the feminine T. So as you can see here, an A has been added before the feminine T to prevent us from getting three consonants in a row. And that's going to change our word sharum, which means king, to sharatum, which means queen. Now, of course, there are some exceptions where some nouns that have a feminine T are actually masculine nouns, and some nouns without the T are actually feminine nouns. But for the most part, it's going to follow with this system which we've just explained. Another important exception to note is that sometimes when you're adding the A, in order to prevent three consonants from being in a row, you're actually going to have to add an E. And this is because of a process called ecoloring, which we're going to explain later on in the series. So the words I've just used really show us the difference between a masculine noun and a feminine noun, a son and a daughter, or a king and a queen. But a lot of nouns don't actually have that clear of a differentiation, and their gender can appear more arbitrary. So for example, this word, imtum, means poison. And poison is going to have a feminine gender, even though a bottle of poison wouldn't exactly be a female. But it's just something that's going to function grammatically. And it's actually really important because when we see the gender, when we see the number, and when we see the case, these are going to agree with other parts of the sentence. So for example, it could say the bad poison or the evil poison, and that adjective is going to have to agree with this in the feminine case. So that's why it's going to be important, no matter what the noun is, to be able to identify its gender, its number, and its case. So just to recap, as you can see, all of these case endings are going to be the same as the masculine singular, except for the addition of the feminine T and the A, which can separate these consonants. So for the nominative, we're going to get martum or sharatum. For the accusative, we're going to get martam or sharatam. And for the genitive, martim or sharatim. So next, let's talk about plural nouns. So plural nouns are going to use different case endings, and that's how we're going to be able to identify that this noun is plural. So as you can see, for masculine plural nouns, the nominative case ending is going to become a long U, and the accusative and the genitive case endings are both going to be a long I. So we're going to have to use context to differentiate between these two case endings. Feminine plural nouns also have their own case endings, and these are nominative atum with a long A, and accusative and genitive, they're again going to be the same, and they're going to be atem with a long A, and these are all going to be added to the stem of the word. Now, an important thing to note is that when we're translating from cuneiform, we're having to provide these long vowels on our own, based off context. But what that means is that, for example, with queen, where there's going to be two consonants at the end of the stem, we would be adding the A anyways. So it's actually going to look identical, sharatum versus sharatum, which is going to be queens plural. So this is something we're going to have to remember based off context so that we can identify where this would need to agree with something that's possibly in the plural. So to explain this, let's look at an example. So here we have the sha sign, sha, the ra sign, ra, and then we have the tum sign, So we can normalize this to sharatum, but we don't know if we're going to need a long A or a short A because we're providing the macrons. That's not something that's actually going to tell us in the cuneiform here. It's something that context is going to tell us. And context is going to tell us using the verb, which is going to follow this. So let's translate the next word in order to see if it indicates whether or not this should be plural or singular. This first sign is the its, is, and sumerogram gish sign. The second sign is the ba sign, and the third sign is the ta sign. So we can normalize this to be it's bada as a G system, preterite, third person, plural feminine verb. And it's going to translate as they, the women, seized. That since this is in the nominative case, it's going to be in agreement as the subject, and that means that it's going to have to agree also in the number. So that means that we're going to have to elongate this A to get sharatum, which we would translate within the whole sentence as the queens seized. So as you can see, it's crucial to be able to understand the three parts of nouns, number, gender, and case, in order to be able to translate from the cuneiform. So this episode has covered all the basics that you need to know about nouns. And to test what you've learned, I have another cuneiform challenge for you right here. And I've got the sign lists in my Patreon, which are available for free, and I'm going to again link the Chicago Assyrian Dictionary in the bio below. So happy translating, and whoever is the first person to comment this will get a shout out on next week's episode.